Okay, well, let's start. Our guests tonight are Edith Thacher and Lisa Howard of the local Citizens Climate Lobby chapter, the Sacramento chapter of CCL. Edith is actually president of the local chapter of CCL, and she's an ECOS board member. And as part of their presentation, I think they will give you an introduction to themselves and to CCL. I asked them particularly to do that because I don't know if we collectively know the breadth of the work of CCL and its work nationally and internationally. And it's so be good to get that view. And then the main focus of their talk, of course, is the federal funding for climate and infrastructure improvements and for development of renewable energy sources, increased efficiency, et cetera, through the last Congress, through the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, through the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and one other. And then after describing the laws, they'll talk to you about how you can access funds through those laws. And so it'll be a great opportunity for us to learn about what's going on in Washington, or what did go on, that's intended to really propel the nation forward, and how we can access the funds in our own lives. So welcome, Edith and Lisa.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that warm welcome, Susan. I sure appreciate it. And let's see if we can get our PowerPoint up. It looks to me, Lisa, like you are also a co-host, so you should be able to do that. And there we go. Okay, have we got a screen that everybody can see? And okay, and we've got everybody on mute, so this looks good. And so first of all, Susan, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you everyone for coming tonight and to participate with us. We're going to talk about the new laws that have climate implications, and we'll do an overview of climate aspects of each of the laws, and then Lisa will focus in on the Inflation Reduction Act and how you can use it to electrify your home. And I want to say that in case you haven't noticed, this is an incredibly hot topic. The law has been in place for 25 days, and I've seen easily 25 articles in different newspapers, you know, various sites talking about the Inflation Reduction Act. So this is probably a lot more timely than we anticipated it would be when we made the plan to do this. All right, who are your speakers? Although Susan is very nice to call me a president, actually, Lisa and I are co-leads of the Sacramento chapter of Sacramento-Roseville chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby, and I'm also on the ECOS board. For a lot of my career, I was a consultant and worked for various state and local governments in the areas of organizational change management and project management. And early in my career, I did community development and trained community health workers overseas. So, in other words, I'm a pretty normal person with no particular science or technical background who became aware of climate changes and became increasingly frightened for myself, for my children, and for my grandchildren. So I have been learning about the science and the politics of creating the political will needed to fight for climate change, or fight against climate change. And I've been doing that for about the last 5 years. Looking out my window these last months, like you, I have witnessed whiplash weather in California, from mega drought to atmospheric rivers, and a little bit of wildfire smoke thrown in between. I understand it's going to get worse, and to me, that's motivating. I personally have to take action, And that's why I volunteer with CCL and with ECOS. Lisa, would you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Lisa Howard. I started out my career many years ago as a journalist, a writer, got into PR and web design. But back in my young days, when I was young and idealistic, I also worked for a nonprofit doing PR, and we planted trees in India. I still love trees, as you can see by my shirt and my background. Then I got back into the rat race of life, and I kind of put that on the back burner. I'd read about things, but I wasn't involved. And then about 5 years ago, I'm like, I have children. This affects my kids. I can't just sit back and read and say, gee, I wish somebody else were doing something. So that's when I decided to get up and do something, and I found CCL. So here I am, normal person, now a political grassroots lobbyist.
That's right. Thank you very much. And as it says there at the bottom, really, to be a successful climate activist, all you have to do is to live on planet Earth and be prepared to speak up. Okay, moving right along with our agenda. We will start out by talking about a little bit about CCL, climate legislation passed by the 117th Congress. And for those of you who don't realize, that's the Congress that just finished. The current one is 118. We'll focus in mostly on the Inflation Reduction Act and what is in it for building electrification and how you can take advantage of that. We'll talk a little bit about things that you can do, and then we'll provide you with some resources, and then talk about, give you an opportunity for some Q&A. So what is Citizens Climate Lobby? Well, we are a nonpartisan grassroots climate organization. We have over 200,000 volunteers internationally and nationwide. We have chapters in almost every congressional district and over 100 international chapters in 50 countries. We're lobbyists. We reach out to our members of Congress through meetings, as well as letter writing campaigns, letters to the editor, and other outreach to influence public opinion. In this photo, this is a Zoom call we're having with Ami Bera, who's there in the bottom left, and also his chief of staff in Sacramento, one of his staff in Sacramento and another one of them in Washington, D.C. We like to say that we are the best lobbyists that money cannot buy. At CCL, our primary goals are to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to protect low-income households. Next slide, please. And we believe that the best way to fight climate change is through a national carbon price. In 2023, our chapter will be working on getting a carbon price, but we will also focus on taking advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act's programs for making buildings efficient and electrifying them. So we'll be doing outreach to educate individuals about the tax rebates and the credits that are available from the US government. And the next slide. On Earth Day in 2021, President Biden announced a big goal, which was to reduce America's carbon emissions 50% by 2030 from our 2005 levels. And miraculously, Congress passed several bills that include provisions to move us towards that goal. So this basically summarizes what happened last year. US annual climate spending increased dramatically. Now, this graphic is from August, and so it doesn't give a complete picture because one more bill called the Omnibus Spending Bill was passed in December and included a little bit more climate money. However, it does show the huge investment in a huge jump in investment in climate action funding between 1990 and 2027. The graph shows reaching $80 billion a year in spending to fight climate change. Now, before we all get really excited and happy about that, I want to just talk about two other numbers. First, the total of these three bills is close to $2 trillion. The climate aspects are about 80 billion. The second number to think about is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, calculates that the US spent more than 165 billion on climate disasters in 2022. So slightly more than this investment. And in the last 6 years, weather and climate change related disasters have cost more than 100 billion a year. So this is nice. It's not enough, but it's better than it used to be. So these three bills, which are what we're going to focus on, at least in my part of the discussion, are complementary. They fit together strategically, and together they improve the US economic competitiveness, innovation, and industrial productivity. And these bills, we can say that they provide the brains, the backbone, and the engine. CHIPS and the Science Act is the brains, gets the cutting edge research going and the emerging technologies. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is the backbone, providing the infrastructure that will enable these technologies to scale at speed. And the IRA is the engine driving investment growth by creating the demand that will provide security for these technologies to become mature. So it's wonderful that they fit together, and let's now focus in on each one separately for a few minutes. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was worth 1.2 trillion, and it was bipartisan. 32 House and Senate Republicans voted for it. That's good. Billions will go to state and local governments. Not all of the money in the bill is for climate change, but the bill, because the bill does a whole lot of different things, but it will make improvements in ports, airports, public transit, rail, and roads. It will support sustainable transportation options for millions of Americans by modernizing and expanding transit and rail networks across the country. And at the same time, it will reduce greenhouse gases. Public transport, the charging network for EVs. And the final item there, there's money investments for reducing methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. And the one of the major aspects of this is that mines and oil and gas wells that are currently leaking methane into the atmosphere will be capped to reduce those releases. Now to talk about the brains, that was the CHIPS and Science Act, 1.8 billion and bipartisan. The main purpose of this bill is to encourage manufacturing of semiconductors in the US. The bill its purpose is to strengthen American manufacturing, supply chains, and national security, and to increase investments in research and development. It builds the workforce of the future to keep the United States the leader in the industries of tomorrow, including nanotechnology, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and clean energy. This bill is designed to help us catch up with China, and China has very wisely been investing a great deal in these areas, and they are the leaders in green technology at this time. The next bill, you may remember the month of December was fraught in Congress as they tried to pass the omnibus spending bill. It was 1.7 billion, bipartisan, and the reason it's so important is it funds the government. So this bill will fund the government through September of 2023. Omnibus means there's lots of stuff in it, including for the military, for Ukraine. It included an overhaul of the electoral vote counting law and lots more. It also funded the CHIPS and Science Act, which was passed as an unfunded bill, and something called the Growing Climate Solutions Act. The Growing Climate Solutions Act is interesting for two reasons that I wanted to mention. CCL worked very hard to get this bill passed. We lobbied senators and members of the House to be co-sponsors, and we ended up in the House with 73 Democrats and 31 Republicans co-sponsoring the bill. And in the Senate, there were 27 Democrats and 26 Republicans who co-sponsored the bill. What does this bill do, the Growing Climate Solutions Act? It supports climate smart farming methods. One of the biggest impediments to land-based climate solutions is the difficulty for agricultural producers to participate in carbon credit trading. And this bill attempts to address that and to create easier methods that farmers and foresters, landholders can participate in. All right, next, the big kahuna, the Inflation Reduction Act. It's not the biggest in terms of dollars. It's only 500 billion, but it has a lot. It was the one with it focused the most on climate. You may recall that there was some brinksmanship with Senator Manchin that preceded the passage of this bill. And the reason it passed is that once a year, the annual budget has to be passed. And at that time, they can use a process called reconciliation, which requires only a simple majority in the Senate instead of the normal 60 votes. And because the Democrats only, including Vice President Kamala Harris, they had 51 votes, they had to get everybody on board. So it was a drama act for sure. All the provisions in a reconciliation bill must relate to revenues, spending, or the debt limit. Congressmen, senators can't just throw in anything that they want. So the bill reduces carbon emissions, it lowers healthcare costs, it funds the IRS, and it improves taxpayer compliance. But what we're going to be focusing in on is the money provided for homeowners to access as tax credits and rebates, and also that will affect and redirect our economy. So how did the Inflation Reduction Act, if it meets its potential, it is estimated to cut climate pollution 40% by 2030. It's a huge step forward in the fight against climate change. How did we succeed? How did we manage to get this passed? It was the culmination of decades of work by climate advocates. Advocates learned from earlier failures, and this time, grassroots groups, lobbying groups like CCL and the Sierra Club and 350 and a number of others got behind this bill and engaged in strong advocacy and lobbying. And I can give you a little bit of information about what CCL did, and I know that Sierra Club and 350 did equal amounts, but we held 920 meetings with congressional offices. We generated over 200,000 contacts to Congress. We made over 50,000 phone calls. We had 10,000 contacts of different kinds in the last 2 weeks. Over the year, we published 2,000 letters to the editor. We published 676 op-eds. And when you think about the other environmental advocacy organizations doing similar work, it was a huge amount of pressure on Congress. Okay, the other reasons that the bill passed was support from a variety of businesses and industries. As an example, Utilities lobbied for it very heavily because there's so much money in it to help them go green. Even the fossil fuel industry did not oppose this bill. Also, public concern about climate change has grown as its impacts have become increasingly visible. It was clear that the public wanted Congress to do something. And finally, clean technology like solar panels and so on have become more affordable and more accepted. People understand what they are, they see them. It's no longer, far out and weird, and so they can see the positive effects. So how will the IRA accomplish these cuts? There are 6 main categories of climate pollution cuts. First is tax credits for clean energy sources like wind and solar. And it's estimated that the IRA will almost double America's share of low carbon electricity, and it will help utilities to make that transition. The fee on methane pollution combined with the EPA methane regulations will curb emissions, hopefully from 70% by 2030 from oil and gas industry. There are tax incentives for new and used EVs, which will encourage the transition away from gas-powered cars, trucks, and buses. There are rebates and tax credits to assist homeowners in electrifying their homes and making them more energy efficient. There's funding for natural climate solutions like forests and agriculture. And there are investments in clean technology innovation and manufacturing. This all adds up to transforming our economy. The Inflation Reduction Act will dramatically change the US economy over the next decade. And we're just going to look at a couple of points, but one of them is electricity generation. Today, we get about 40% of our electricity from clean sources. That's expected to roughly double, maybe as high as 85% by 2030. And this will be mostly due to wind and solar. And those numbers are expected to triple from today's levels. EVs, a big chunk of new car and truck sales are expected to be electric in 2030. Some estimates say that it could be more than half, up from the 5% that it is today. Now, as you're listening, I hope you are all thinking about jobs. The investments from the bill are projected to create about 1 million new jobs in clean energy, manufacturing, and building electrification and efficiency upgrades. The IRA will do a lot of good things for the economy, for businesses, and for individuals. And I'm going to stop now and let Lisa talk about the details of that.
Thank you, Edith. A lot of federal legislation that gets passed, such as that which Edith was just talking about, it doesn't have very many actionable items for consumers because federal legislation is obviously designed to affect mass change on a national scale. The IRA is different because it, or at least the parts of it that we're concerned with, it affects that mass change by putting power and money into the hands of the average Americans so that they can electrify their homes and vehicles. Why would we want to do that? Well, 3 main reasons. First is money, health, and climate. Let's look at those. Money. So going electric is expected to save average Americans about $1,800 a year. How is that going to happen? Well, first thing you need to know is that electricity is much more efficient than burning fossil fuels because it doesn't lose energy as waste heat. Therefore, you need less overall energy. And electricity prices are generally more stable because they come from a wide variety of sources: wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, natural gas, etc. Those all go into the electric prices. So this chart here shows you electric prices. It's the green line here in the middle. And natural gas prices, that's the gray line. And then gasoline prices, which is this brownish color there. And as you can see here, all of these numbers have spiked in the right-hand side of the screen, but electric prices, even though they've spiked, have not gone up as much as natural gas or gasoline. So gas prices are much more volatile than electric prices. And even though we may love it when that spike is going down, we hate it when it goes the other way. And it's really hard for people to budget when your monthly bills are so volatile. So going electric can lead to lower bills, both from increased efficiency and also from more consistent electric rates that are not having people experiencing these huge spikes throughout the year. The second reason electrification makes sense is health. We've known for years, for decades, that outdoor air pollution can cause a multitude of health problems, up to and including death. A lot of people die early from pollution. And now the evidence is becoming increasingly clear that indoor air pollution is also a huge problem, especially indoor air pollution caused by natural gas appliances. Those have a negative effect on our health. And in fact, recent studies have shown that natural gas is responsible for about 12% of childhood asthma cases. Third reason the legislation is important is climate. Now you can see from this graph that the United States greenhouse gas emissions have been going down. That's a good thing. But if you look over here where we're at, business as usual, before the IRA was passed, we're way up here and our Paris target is way down here. So we're looking at about 27% reduction in emissions between 2005 and projected out to 2030 before the IRA was passed, which is a long way from our Paris target of 50% reduction by 2030. Now, after the IRA was passed, right here, you can see in the green that the Inflation Reduction Act can get us to about 40% of our goal, 40% reductions of greenhouse gas emissions compared to 2005 emissions. But notice that this green dotted line, it kind of falls in the middle of the green section. This is the uncertainty range. We could hit 40%, or we could stay somewhere around 27%. Maybe we'll even do better than 40%. Scientists can model the impacts of how much our emissions will decrease if we do this or we do that, which is where that uncertainty falls in. But what they can't do is tell us how we're going to behave. So the reason home electrification becomes so important in achieving these targets is that there is a lot of home energy use that is still reliant on fossil fuels. In your home, the two biggest contributors to your carbon footprint are home heating and water heating. Home heating is about 25% and water heating is about 10%. Now, we don't replace our home heaters or water heaters every day like we put on new socks, or every year like, maybe we upgrade, get new tennis shoes or something every year. But when we do replace these items, we have to do it because you can't live without heat. So when it's time to replace these items, the IRA makes it easy. It's going to be a no-brainer that you're going to want to go to an electric one or a gas appliance over a gas appliance, or an EV over a gas car, because the IRA is going to make it very economically appealing. The reason this is important is because when we talk about having a clean grid run by solar, wind, hydro, etc., we could get all of those things onto the grid, but we're never going to get rid of natural gas unless homes and businesses get rid of all the natural gas appliances in them. And you can see here on this chart that there's a huge difference. Excuse me. So this is where the IRA comes in. The rebates and credits are going to make it more affordable for people to go electric. upfront rebates are going to be available sometime later this year. We don't know exactly when those will be available, but when they do become available, they're going to be pretty enticing. Consumers who fall under 80% of the average area median, or AMI, are going to be able to get 100% of their purchase cost covered. Consumers who make 81 to 150% of the AMI will be eligible for 50% upfront discounts. The discounts vary by appliance, but they're significant, up to $1,800 for a heat pump water heater or $8,000 for a new home heating and cooling system. In addition, even those with higher incomes are eligible for tax credits, which are 30% for most of the eligible appliances, but there are certain things that have other amounts in the legislation, such as EVs. They have their own rebate. Whoops, I went through here twice. When you add up all the available rebates, it can be the upfront rebates, it can be up to $14,000 per household, plus the tax credits, which can bring the total incentives for a single household to more than $20,000. Now, this isn't all available in a single year. They do cap the annual incentives at $1,200 for most of the home improvements. So if you wanted to go out and do everything this year, you're not going to be able to do that. But most people aren't ready to spend tens of thousands of dollars to upgrade everything at once anyways. And this legislation is available, and the rebates and tax credits in it are available for the next 10 years. So this legislation has a lot of great incentives in it, and we're only going to talk about a few today. So I encourage you to take time after this meeting to learn more as we're talking. And as we're talking, if you want to think about your own home and what things you might need to upgrade, this is kind of some of the things that you can see. Look at this. There's everything here from electric induction stoves to heat pump dryers, even upgrades to your electric panel and weatherization, such as extra insulation in your home, can be covered. So think about it as we talk. What would you like to do? Because the money is here. You can visit this, which is the Rewiring America calculator, by going to rewiringamerica.org/app/IRA-calculator. And I think Edith is going to put that URL in the chat. As I said, there's a lot in this legislation, but I'm just going to focus on three big things: home heating and air, water heating, and transportation. Oops, going the wrong way. Here we go. So heating and air conditioning accounts for about 25% of the average American's carbon footprint. The IRA incentivizes people to replace their old systems with new heat pump systems. And heat pumps are about 3 to 5 times more efficient than most fossil fuel-based options. Plus, they will save you money over traditional systems. This slide will give you, right here, an idea of just how much money you can save every year. Now, it goes from a low of just about $100 a year to more than $1,200 a year if you have baseboard heaters. And if you do, I'm sorry, because you're paying a lot, but think how much you can save. But because home heating and AC systems are expensive, these are the items that also have the highest rebates available under the IRA. Heat pump technology can also be used in water heaters. Again, these are a lot more efficient than gas or traditional electric water heaters, and they'll save you money in the long run. So heat pump water heaters aren't new. They've been out there for a while, but consumers have not, flocked to them because they're more expensive, and most of them have required a 240-volt outlet. There are now 120-volt heat pump water heaters out there, so they can plug into a regular outlet. I know that there are 2 manufacturers now who have those on the market. And the IRA provides incentives for electric panel upgrades in some situations. So if you did want to go with the 240 volt, you might be able to also include that in your rebate or tax credit. So I should point out also an important thing about the heat pump water heaters is that these don't count against the annual limit of how much you can save or get back in rebates. So the heat pump water heater, you can go and do that. And then you can also go out and do some other upgrades to get up to that $1,200 a year max. EV incentives are also an important part of the IRA. The legislation extended the $7,500 credit for electric vehicles, but it added a lot of new requirements regarding where the car and the battery are manufactured and sourced, how much the car can cost, how much you can make. Honestly, these new additions to the federal rebate on EVs are rather confusing, and car manufacturers are scrambling to make sure their EVs are going to be eligible for the credit. So expect that the playing field for this is going to continue to change. And our website does have some more information if you want to look into that. And if you're looking for a car, I'd say, your car dealer is going to be the person to know whether or not they're eligible. However, there is a great little loophole in this legislation, and that is lease cars are eligible for the rebates, regardless of where they're sourced or manufactured. And you don't have to meet all the other requirements either. So leasing may be the way to go if you're thinking about getting an EV. We can expect EVs to continue to grow in popularity as people begin to realize that they're cheaper to drive and maintain, not to mention super fun to drive. There was a University of Michigan study that found the average cost to operate an EV in the United States is $485 a year, while the average for a gas-powered vehicle is $1,117. A little bit, depending on which study you look at, it might be a little bit different because there's some others that say it's about 1/3 the cost, and that's not quite. But they definitely are cheaper. I much prefer to fast charge my EV than to put gas in my gas-powered car. As we all know, EVs are also better for the environment. I hear some people, will push back on this and wonder, oh, are they really better? Because, you have to mine the lithium, and then, the grid isn't that green, and you have to plug them in, and, you have to, do all this stuff. Well, I want to show you this slide. I love this map. What this map shows is the equivalent mileage you'd need to get in a gas-powered car to beat the environmental benefits of owning an EV. In California, you'd need a car that gets 122 miles a gallon or better to beat the benefits of owning an EV, despite the mining for lithium and plugging it into an imperfect grid. And as you can see, it varies across the country. In California and the Pacific Northwest, where they get a lot of their power from hydroelectric, where our grid is cleaner, it would take a lot more to be as beneficial as an EV. Now, in other parts of the country, you wouldn't have to have quite so high of a mileage, but you can see most of these are higher than the average mileage you'd get in a gas-powered car. So the IRA also included a great new benefit that should help incentivize EV ownership, and that is a tax credit for used EVs. Now, this credit is worth $4,000 or 30% of the price of the car, whichever is less. And this isn't quite as complicated as the credit for the new EVs, as it doesn't have requirements on where the car or its components are made or sourced. But it does have some limits, including the capping the car price at $25,000 and capping your income at $75,000 for individuals or $150,000 for joint filers. Now, there are a lot of other incentives in the legislation that we just don't have time to go over today, but this slide gives you a quick overview of some of them. A good place to start is with a home energy audit, which is covered up to $150. You might find in that audit that you need better insulation or better insulated exterior doors, and those are covered under weatherization. You could also get rooftop solar and battery backup. Those also have credits and rebates, and EV chargers and a lot of other things. So again, I encourage you to visit the Rewiring America website. Use their calculator. If you put in your filing status, your zip code, and your income, they'll tell you exactly what you're eligible. They'll show you all the options and just how much you qualify for. Now, we looked at this stuff. So what can you do? Right now, the tax credits are available now. If you need a new water heater, if you need extra insulation in your home, if you want the induction stove, you can get the credit from SMUD, or you can get the rebate from SMUD and get the tax credit now, or you can wait and see if you can get both. But any of the things that we just talked about, you can get the tax credits now. You won't actually get them until you file your taxes next year, but you're eligible for them now. Now, the upfront rebates, the 100% or 50%, depending on if you meet the income requirements, those aren't going to be available until later this year. We don't have an exact timeline yet. But until then, what we can do is create demand and build awareness by asking about the discounts. Like every time you go into Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace Hardware, wherever you're going, and you know, it doesn't matter. You're going to go in and buy, I don't know, Windex, and you know, just wander over into the appliance aisle and say, "Hey, you know, I'm wondering, you know, do you know anything about those Inflation Reduction Act rebates on induction stoves?" Because we need to get awareness and education, and just talking to people will go a long way. A lot of people are unaware about this act and that they now have what we call an electric bank account, you know, to go electric. So the more you talk about it, the more people will become educated. This is also a great way to talk to people who don't want to talk about climate change, because we know there's those people out there. You do not have to care about carbon footprints or the Paris Agreement or ending fossil fuels or any of that who want to save money and improve your health. When it's cheaper to buy an electric heat pump water heater because you got a tax credit and a rebate, and it's going to save you money every month and every year, why would you ever choose gas? The only reason is lack of knowledge about the options. So go out there, visit our website if you'd like. We've got more information on going electric. Talk to people, see what you're eligible for yourself, how you'd like to make upgrades in your life. And, you know, let's really make sure that that uncertainty range is heading closer to the Paris target and not up to the business as usual target. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for your time.